Hey everybody, this is my favorite game, hill climb racing. Here I'm going to do a walkthrough for the monster truck in Countryside. I make it as far as 8,862 meters. And yes, my description and my title are correct. You'll see at the very end that I do in fact run into disappearing bridges very close to the end. Pretty cool little Easter egg that the developers put in this game, I think. Anyway, so for general strategy, I always start out with going the first approximately 2,000 meters, just rushing through it as fast as I can. It's not too difficult, especially once you get used to it. There aren't any really tricky parts for the first 2,000 meters. And so the most important thing to remember is simply to keep your vehicle, for the most part, generally level, and watch out for getting your rear wheel clipped by a hill or something. If the rear wheel gets clipped, then it'll make you fling forward, and so you try to avoid that, and whenever it does happen, just keep holding down that gas to keep yourself from rotating too far forward. In general, when you're flying in the air, the gas will make your vehicle rotate back, and the brake will make your vehicle rotate forward. So one of the general techniques that you're going to see later on here that will really help out is when you really need to get a boost and you can't seem to get the right grip at the right time when you're trying to get up a hill. What you need to do is take advantage of the suspension. Use the suspension like a spring. Get your vehicle into a starting motion that causes your suspension to compress a lot, and that will get you a lot of traction, and that's when you want to take off to be able to get up a hill. So here, as you can see, I'm just keeping my vehicle level. I launch off pretty much everywhere I want to. Right here, I just skipped over a hill that I sometimes will launch off of, but not too hard, because otherwise I'll end up face planting in that ditch we just went over that has all the coins. So just be a little bit careful about that. That's one spot that is really easy, but occasionally when I'm being stupid, I'll mess up on. So now that we're at about 1,600 meters or so, I'm still getting through it kind of quick, but the hills are getting a little bit steeper, and so I'm not jumping off them flying all the time, but I'm not going way slow either, so I'm just taking it kind of easy, but it's not too difficult still. This bridge here, it's tempting to go flying right off of it, but if you go flying off of this bridge, there's a good chance that your rear wheel will clip the hill coming up here, this spike right here. Your rear wheel will clip that frequently if you try flying off of the bridge, and you'll face plant into the next mountainside. So just go off of that bridge slowly. And I'm going a little bit slower and a little bit slower. Here I don't want to go launching way too high off of this thing. I want to fall into the hill. I want to have my wheels facing in the same parallel with the hill. Here I especially want to just make sure I just land on top and I take down slowly and I brake very slowly into this ditch. We're going to be doing that a lot later on the more difficult hills. The basic idea is don't go launching way over a hill, just slowly, and then on your way down, find chances to brake so that you don't build up too much acceleration going down the hills. That way you'll have more control. Now this is one of the trickiest hills to get up in the whole game. Watch, I'll go back a little bit and then I'll tap forward. That time I tapped backwards a little bit too much. So I'm going to do it one more time here. tap back a little bit, and then go up. So you just launch up as hard as you can right after you tap back about a distance of half the diameter of your front wheel. And make sure right after you tap back, you're going to tap forward. Here, make sure that you don't gun it until after your front wheel leaves that small divot so that your truck is facing upwards as it launches off. Otherwise, it'll fling your rear tire up a bit and your front tire down, and then you won't be facing your vehicle in the right orientation to get up that hill. Okay, we're coming up on a part here where we want to skip over this ditch. There's a fuel down in there, but we don't want to get it because that ditch is almost impossible to get out of. I've only gotten out of it a few times before. And when you get to this bridge, make sure you go slowly onto the bridge, but once you're on the bridge, launch off of it as fast as you can, and that will get you to the fuel that's next as soon as possible so that you don't spend too much time after having skipped the fuel. From this point on, it really is just a matter of being slow, methodical, careful, not launching over the hills, but launching up on top of the hills, and then going down the hills as slowly as possible. You just try to stay next to the terrain as much as possible. Now here, there is an example where I used the suspension to help spring me forward. If you noticed, I went forward, I got up the hill a little bit, and then on my way back down, falling back down, I positioned myself so that I landed in a place that would compress my suspension a lot, and then that would help me launch forward. And there I made sure my back wheel did not catch on the tip so that it wouldn't make me rotate suddenly. So far we're at 2750 meters. We got a long ways to go still. It takes a long time on countryside because you got to go slow. So that's one of the other things that's kind of annoying. When you're playing this game and you get a little bit better enough that you can get as far as 8,000 meters or more, then it takes forever to get that far. And there's so many little spots where they're not too hard, but you could easily mess up on. So here, it would have been very easy to mess up if I had launched way ahead of that hill, and then I wouldn't have seen where I was going to land. So I had to be careful to just launch just barely over the hill and then fall into the contour of the land. When I brake is usually when the going downhill, in order to slow down, the best places to brake are when the terrain is concave. If you don't know what that means, look it up. Wikipedia is great. So when the terrain is concave, that will give you your best chance of braking. Like right there. It was concave for a second. Right there. And that will make sure that when you brake, you're not flipping forward. If you try braking while it's convex, it'll more easily flip forward and then you'll fall on top of your head. Now that's also something else to keep in mind is as you're falling down the slope and you're trying to limit how fast you go down it, you just gotta be careful to find those spots to brake. But when you get to the bottom, you actually want to accelerate right when you hit the bottom. Because when you hit the bottom, oftentimes it's something where it's just a sudden thud. But if you're accelerating, your thud will go forward instead of making you fall over on top of your head. So it gets a little bit tricky sometimes, especially when you're picking up some acceleration. You're trying to slow down a bit. Okay, right here I got to interrupt from what I was saying before. So I stop, I brake, and then I go forward. The important thing there is, first of all, that spot at about 3240 meters is another very difficult ditch to get out of. It's not too difficult to get out if you go backwards out of it, but then you got to jump over it again anyways. So if you get yourself right before the ditch and do what I just did, which is stop the vehicle, tap the brake kind of hard, real quick, just for a moment, and right after you tap the brake, you gun it forward. Now if you just stop and gun it forward, you might not have your vehicle oriented in the right way in order to get over the ditch instead of launching into the ditch. tapping the brake right before you launch forward helps you generate the right angular momentum to keep your vehicle pointing up as you launch forward, and that helps you clear the ditch. As far as I know, those two spots, the one that was around, I'm not sure exactly where it was 2,300 meters or something? It was the one 2 fuel stations after the top of the 2150 hill. So that one is very difficult to get out of. That's the one ditch that you really got to watch out for. And then the other one was that one at about 3,250 meters. You want to skip over that ditch. There's other ditches that I usually skip over as well because they look kind of iffy, but there's only two. Those are the only two ditches where I've ever gotten stuck in and has been a nightmare trying to get out of. So for these next few thousand meters, it's actually nothing really new. It doesn't get extremely difficult in comparison to what we've seen already. It's about the same level of difficulty for a few thousand meters. There are a couple of hills where you really need to use that suspension to spring you up the hills, and I'll try to point those out as we come to them. But basically, the hills are about the same size. The drops are about the same size. As long as you just take it slow, go down, brake on the concave, like I just did there, then you'd be pretty much fine. Usually when I mess up, most of the time it's because I get to a particular hill and I accidentally just launch off way too far. And then I don't know where I'm going to land, and I just flip over, hit myself against the next mountainside going up, and it's messy. So really, it's just a matter of, for almost everything, just going slow and methodical and not jumping way over a hill into the sky. Coming up on 4,000 meters real soon here. A little less than halfway there. So even these ditches that seem really, they look tougher than they really are. They're not really that tough, so it's a good idea to just keep to that rule of thumb. Just stick with the terrain. Don't leave the terrain too far. Don't go jumping over a bunch of stuff. Even this little ditch right here, I just go into the ditch. And if you are going to jump over a ditch, if a ditch looks a little bit too difficult, make sure you have a good, well thought out plan. Make sure you can see the other side. Make sure you use that technique I showed where if you're going to jump over a ditch, you tap the back brake, and you tap the brake, then right after tapping the brake, you launch forward. Or if you got something like this where you, okay, right here, I tap to the back, I tap to the brake, and then I launch forward. Usually when people start out playing this game, they're quite prone to just holding down the gas for a while, holding down the brake for a while, instead of using very tiny taps. Okay, this hill is a little bit difficult. It's one where you really got to land into that small ditch right. See here? I compress and then I go up. So by landing in that position as I fall back down, I'm able to really compress my suspension, and then I can use that to launch up really high because I got good traction during that half a second. So as I was saying, just be very, very gentle with the gas and the brake. Only hit it real hard for a lengthy period of time when it really needs it. Other than that, just use little taps, to control your vehicle. Get used to it, practice it. As you can see here, I've been playing this game way too much. I've gotten a lot of practice. I've got 139 million coins. I don't think I'm aching for money. I stopped worrying about money a long time ago. Got all the upgrades. Don't even try to do this without all the upgrades. You're not going to get this far. So here, I couldn't get up the hill, so I got back onto that little platform, I put my rear wheel on it, and that gave me the last little boost I needed to get up. So there, it could have been very easy to follow the temptation of just launching over that hill really far. And then I wouldn't have known where I would have landed. So instead, I just tapped up it just barely enough to get over, and then I hit the brakes as soon as I get a first chance to do so. Just barely over the hill. Brake on the concave part. Meanwhile, let me put a little plug in for my website where you can post your high scores for this game. It's at sites.google.com/site/hillclimbracingforum. I posted the web address in the description, so you can just copy and paste it from there. It's just a little unofficial website I made where people have been starting to post their scores if they've gotten them. You can also include links to pictures or videos that you posted online to corroborate the scores that you get. I think it'll be a great way that we can all just share how far we've gotten and see what's even possible. Now, the only other vehicle that makes sense on countryside is the tank. And for a while, I wasn't sure whether the tank is better or the monster truck was better. It took me a long time to figure out how to get up the 2150 hill consistently with the monster truck. But with the tank, it's pretty straightforward once you figure it out. And hopefully, now that you've seen how I get up the hill and with the monster truck, it's pretty straightforward with the monster truck as well. But in general, the tank I can usually get further without messing up. Because the tank is more stable, it can handle the ditches very easily because it's so malleable. And so for a while I was wondering, okay, well, which one is ultimately better? Which vehicle can get you the furthest? And I've come to the conclusion that the monster truck is the best vehicle. The tank can get you as far as 6,849 meters. It might be possible to get up the hill at that point, but it was really hard for me, and I would imagine it might be impossible for anybody to get up that hill at 6,849 meters with the tank. If that hill is possible, I've seen other hills past that one that definitely are impossible for the tank. There is no way. They're just vertical walls, straight up, quite a distance. And the only way that the monster truck is able to beat the tank is because it's got such a good acceleration compared to the tank. But the tank is definitely easier to not mess up to that point. So more of the same stuff. I'm just going down the hill slowly. That's the main strategy, is go down those hills slowly, don't launch over them. Brake on the concave parts of the terrain as you're going down. Don't hit the brake when you hit the bottom of the hills, because then you'll flip over on top of your head. And then just take your time. Take your time within reason, that is. There are a couple of spots throughout this level that if you mess up like 3 times in a row trying to get up a more difficult hill, then you might run out of fuel. So some of those more difficult hills might need a few times of practice so you get the technique down so that you don't spend too much time working on them. Now, just a few seconds here back, you saw that one of the techniques I do, oh, here it is again. Okay, I grab the top with my front wheel. So it was even more so the the hill before that. You've seen maybe on a few of these hills, I just barely get to the top, and then the only thing that I get over the top is just a little bit of the front wheel. It's all you need. So you got to trust the four-wheel drive on this vehicle. It can get you really far when you got these good tires when the whole vehicle is upgraded. All you need is just to get that front wheel up to the top. That didn't do it. Here, let me try again. That got plenty of distance. Get the front wheel just barely to the top, and if you just grab it and nudge it, nudge it, nudge it, don't let yourself rotate backwards too far. That's why you got to tap the gas. You just keep tapping it until it'll just pull the rest of your vehicle over. See there, I used my compressed suspension to get launching up even higher. So as you fall backwards from a failed attempt up a hill, then you're going to compress your suspension and use that to your advantage. Here I'm going to do it again. Or not. Okay, apparently I got up that hill just fine without having to drop back down. So my brother and I noticed something kind of weird on this game. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you come to certain bridges and they're already moving? Who's the other guy that's racing ahead of you? What's up with that? We found some other interesting things in the game. One of my brother's friends fell down onto a bridge from a really high distance using the rally car, and the slats in the bridge separated so much that the vehicle went through them, and then when the slats came back together, it snapped the guy's neck, and so he suffered death by bridge. The picture was awesome. I wish I had a copy of that picture. Maybe I do somewhere, or my brother might. But the picture was of this car caught halfway between this bridge, and it was just stuck in the middle. I kind of pulled off the same thing myself on the cave level, but it wasn't the whole body. It wasn't half of the car being stuck in there, and then the body's neck being snapped in half. Instead, I just got the front wheel underneath the bridge, and then the rest of it was above the bridge. It was pretty cool. I think it was the second bridge that you come across on cave, so it's pretty early in the game. You just go charging through with the rally car, just using your gas. Just leave your gas on the whole way till you get to that second bridge. You'll launch into it, and if you do it just right, you can get it to really push down on the bridge a lot. I've only been able to actually get my wheel underneath the bridge one time, but it's a pretty cool glitch. Recently, Fingersoft added the Snowmobile as a new vehicle to this game. Awesome vehicle. Interestingly enough, I don't think they planned on the Snowmobile actually being the best vehicle for several other levels besides the new ones they added. So they obviously added the Snowmobile because it's the only one that makes any sense on the new level called Arctic Cave. But it's also a really good vehicle on some other levels. I've got my highest score on Desert, and on Highway, and on Arctic using the Snowmobile, and on Alien Planet. So one of the reasons why I can get so far on places like Alien Planet or Highway is because it's got a longer lasting fuel tank once it's upgraded, just like the tank does. But it's got better speed and acceleration than the tank, so you're able to make it further. So I've been able to make it somewhere past 10,000 meters on Highway. Hopefully I'll be able to make a video of that sometime too. But my best on Highway without that vehicle, using the rally car, I've gotten about 9,050 meters. I've seen a couple of other people post videos of the rally car on the Highway, and they've gotten about the same, about 9,030 or 9,050 meters. But you can get above 10,000 meters if you're really careful and you know exactly where the fuel stations are if you use that Snowmobile. It's pretty awesome. It's also a little bit more stable than the rally car, too, as long as you learn how to use it and you understand what makes the thing flip. The snowmobile will flip easily if you jam the ski into the ground. So that's something you got to watch out for with the snowmobile. But it's pretty easy once you get used to it to make sure you don't do that very often. Check out my other videos that I've posted on this playlist. I've got one video of getting 4,475 meters in the cave. It's only 6 minutes long. It's not a long video like this one. And I put some awesome music to it. And got some pretty crazy stunts I pull off in the cave in that video. So check out the other videos I got. And please post your high scores on that website that I made. sites.google.com/site/hillclimbRacingForum. Also on that site, you can do more than just post your scores. You can also, there's also a link to a Google group that you can get to through the website, so that you can post any kinds of questions you have or comments or just share any information, anything at all. It's just be an open forum, open discussion area. I've posted a couple of things on there like hints on how to handle certain areas, and posted a link to my brother's video on how to use the tank to get up 2150 hill on countryside. And yeah, use it to ask any kinds of questions you have. I'll be more than happy to answer them as you post them on there. So we are now at 7,300 meters and going strong. Well beyond the point where the tank fails. So the monster truck ultimately is the best vehicle for this level. It's also the funnest one. Here's another spot where I got to use the compression to get up the hill a little bit. Oh, it wasn't too bad actually. Okay, there I was being a little bit too dangerous with how far I flew over the hill. Luckily it was a nice terrain to land on top of, but it could have been worse. For your information, the fuel tanks are stationed at every multiple of 90 meters on countryside. There are a couple of other levels where they are stationed every 90 meters as well, for example the moon and desert. As you might have already noticed, they are not always stationed 90 meters apart on other levels. For example, highway, they keep getting further and further apart. That's the main challenge of highway. As you get further along, you've got to keep going faster and faster if you've got to make it to the next fuel station. Arctic makes you think that it's going to be 90 meters apart the whole way, but once you get to 1,800 meters, it breaks that pattern. It starts actually getting further and further apart. So on Arctic, once you get to 1,800 meters, then they just start spacing out more and more. It's possible with the rally car to make it as far as maybe 3,000 meters, but after that it's pretty tough to make it to the next fuel station with the rally car. That's why the snowmobile comes in real handy on Arctic, because you got a longer lasting fuel tank. And it really handles the snow well. 7,900 meters. Not much further before I come to the end. And not much further before we start seeing the disappearing bridges. Sorry, running out of things to say. This is a really long time to be talking to a video. Should be coming up on a couple of tricky spots pretty soon here. This one's pretty straightforward. Actually, you can't launch up very far the first time, but when you fall back down, and use the suspension like I just did, it'll launch you really high. And that's what you need to do. So when you fall back down, angle your vehicle, tilt it forward so that you're facing downward, land on the back side of that little ditch, and then just launch yourself up. This part was okay for me to fly a little bit over because I knew that it was going to be flat, pretty flat terrain afterwards. Okay, so this hill right here, I run out of fuel on pretty quickly. It's a kind of tough hill to get up. I tried it a couple of times by launching out of that ditch like I just did, and I've done it before launching out of that ditch, but notice that here I've got a second option. I can just take off like that. And the nice thing about taking off all the way before the ditch is then you position your vehicle just right so that it starts slowing down right as you get to the little divot near the top of the hill. That little divot is the place where you want to land, where you want to be able to get more grip. You don't want to be flying over the divot. You want your vehicle to start slowing down as you reach that divot close to the top of that hill around 8,300 so that you're able to use the divot to launch yourself just a little bit further, get over the last bit. Alright, coming up on 8,600 meters, and I'll bet real soon here we're going to see the disappearing bridges. What will happen is the bridges will... There it goes. Did you see that? It'll disappear after a couple of seconds of being on the bridge, and then the next bridge will last an even shorter amount of time, and eventually it disappears the moment you touch it. And so it's basically just like having a chasm you gotta jump over. So I'm going to try to get across this bridge as fast as I possibly can. Notice it disappeared almost the moment I touched it. Makes me wonder, is there actually an end to these levels? I've never seen an end to these levels. And this one I just couldn't get past, and that's where I end up dying. Well, running out of fuel, I guess, because I didn't snap my neck. So yeah, I wonder whether there really is an end to these levels or not. They probably just make them so difficult that there's a certain point where you just can't get past anymore, like these disappearing bridges. So kudos to you, Fingersoft. Good job making this game. I love it. I'm addicted to it. I hope you guys get addicted to it too. It's a great game. And enjoy. I hope you liked the walkthrough.